All righty. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to live YouTube coverage here. Morning discussion, Tropical Storm Milton. If this is the first time you've tuned into the live version of this, it's much more candid. And I'm not doing like a presentation where everything has to be perfect. And it's just a discussion, kind of looking over the same stuff I look at, getting ready for my afternoon update that I produce during hurricane season and other parts of the year. Except today, this will be the update because I have to hit the road in a few hours, head down to Florida, and we all know what for. We have Tropical Storm Milton, and we need to discuss the future of this system, what impacts to expect, and then what I look for from my years of experience in terms of the structure of it, the timing of everything, and also where you can find some very helpful information in your local area because people are going to have a lot of questions about what to do, who to turn to, pertinent local information, and it's all right there at your fingertips. I'm going to hopefully simplify it for you because through this and then all these apps that we have on here, there's a lot of noise out there. There really is. There's a lot of voices that are, almost screaming at you whether you want them to or not. And that gets to be very overwhelming. And yeah, I totally understand. I mean, I live in Wilmington, North Carolina. We get hurricane threats here. 6 years ago was our worst one in a while. That was Florence. And, imagine I have to get ready for something like Florence, which at one time was forecast to make landfall here as a category 4. That's rather unpleasant. And get everything ready for the work that I do. So it's doubly difficult. So the stress level, I can definitely empathize with people that are going through a lot. You see stuff on social media that doesn't really have much context. And you're left with questions. And that's, kind of the downfall and one of the pitfalls of social media. But on the other hand, we can do this. And you can hear from people like me, the National Hurricane Center. They do social media live briefings that are not constrained by time like you would have on traditional television or what we call appointment viewing. So that's great. Um, we have to use it. We have to know how to use it. And as Uncle Ben said in the original Spider-Man from, what was that, '01, '02, something like that, with great power comes great responsibility. He told that to Peter Parker. We have to know how to use these tools to our advantage. All right. So that being said, let's go back to the screen share and we will get started. Get my old telestrator running and get everything. Come on, let's work for me here, please. We're gonna have to use yellow today. I feel like Bob Ross. Run all the colors across the screen for you. And what shall we do for the marker? We'll make that one red. All right. So National Hurricane Center, this is interesting. Hurricane hunters have been out, and this was the NOAA Hurricane Hunter. I think that's the P3 Orion, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, but hopefully I'm not. And they find that Milton is already stronger than anticipated. Pressure down to 991, winds are 60 miles per hour, and it is moving to the east at 5, so it's a slow progress right now with Milton. And then you got your dashboard on here, which we're going to come back to in just a minute. And this kind of lines up with what people are talking about across social media. Michael Lowry, not great to see the first Hurricane Hunter Center drops on in Milton, indicating a central pressure 10 to 15 millibars lower than their 5 a.m. advisory package. And Greg Diamond up at Fox Weather, same kind of thing. They're tracking this over at Tropical Tidbits, where you can, literally keep an eye on the recon data. What a world, right? We've had that for years, but something else. And, this all falls in line with this very active pattern that we're in. And just looking at this, shot here from my friend Dylan, you have Kirk out here, you've got Leslie. It's another system that's going to be coming off of Milton over here. And the GFS is trying to scare up more trouble down here, down the road a piece. We'll worry about that later. So you can just kind of get a sense here at the first few parts of how the algorithm works. that Milton is top of mind, and it is stronger intensity wise, pressure wise, definitely stronger than we were anticipating. But I will say this, it does not look particularly healthy on satellite, but that's why recon is so important. And let's switch this over to, let's see if we have enough. What is it, 9:06 a.m.? Let's see if we have enough high-res visible images. No, we don't. It's still just a little bit too dark out there. The way the satellite data comes in, it's pretty frequent, but sun needs to come up a little bit more. But what we can notice, though, and we'll pause it on the last picture, there are some large towering thunderstorms with this system, and the center's probably right in here somewhere. A little bit of banding, you're seeing that. So it's getting its act together. The global models, the hurricane models show that it is supposed to intensify as it sort of bends back and heads in this direction, skirting well to the north with the center of the Yucatan, but going to bring some impacts there for sure. So speaking of impacts, let's just talk about this dashboard here. One of the tips that I've got for you is to use this. So instead of scrolling aimlessly through any social media, trying to find bits and pieces here and there from people you may or may not know or have ever heard of, it's all right here. And it's at the National Hurricane Center homepage, and it's free. We pay for it with our taxes, right? And it's right here. You just click on these different thumbnails, and this dashboard is fantastic. We even have it in Spanish, and there's all kinds of stuff from the public advisory. And let's look at that real quick because I want to point out something really important here. So the public advisory gives you a headline right up here, all right? And then you've got your little summary of stats here, your watches and warnings in here, which are very important, obviously. And if we scroll down, we can see the outlook, kind of a briefing, the discussion, very brief discussion, and an outlook. And within this part right here, the discussion and the outlook is extremely important information. You have your maximum sustained winds, which are right there. But then this is what people have asked me about often recently with this one. How far will do whatever the winds extend out from the center? So right now, we only have tropical storm force wind because it's just a tropical storm, and the wind field is not very large, 35 miles from the center. So that's not very big at all. Remember, Helene was huge. Once this becomes a hurricane, and we certainly assume it will, then we will get hurricane force wind radii and tropical storm force wind. Your wind fields will um, continue to modify, and that information will be updated right here. And then you get your pressure, of course, right here, which is down to 991. So it is deeper, more intense pressure-wise than we were thinking it would be. But folks, this is what you want right here when you want to know these stats, especially the wind field information. Very, very important because this will help you decide what you need to do in terms of preparation in your area. And then your hazard affecting land. Eventually, the storm surge forecast will become part of this, but it's not there yet because it's not going to be approaching land just yet. So we're going to have a few more advisories probably until we start getting storm surge forecasts. So there's all kinds of stuff, the wind speed probabilities, and some of this can get into the weeds a little bit. People need to understand what probability is. But then this is the simple stuff. The arrival, the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds. Don't ask necessarily on social and you get 10 different answers. It's right here. So the earliest reasonable arrival time of 34 knot winds, so 40 miles per hour or higher, Tuesday around 8 p.m. across this area. Now, that doesn't mean Alabama will get some or that Cuba will. And explaining and understanding how this cone and graphic or whatever this weird polygon thing is, that's hard to explain. But, no, the wind field isn't going to be this large. But um, in the area of Florida, obviously, where we know this is going to make the most impact, right now, the earliest reasonable time of the wind is at 8 p.m. And it explains the product as well. And It's, again, pretty in depth, but it's all right here. And it's very, very useful for you. Flash flood and rainfall potential, moderate risk now in the red. And that includes the moderate risk down in southeast Florida, where last I checked, there's a few million people living in this area. So you're going to need to be ready for that. Make sure you get your quick dams if you can find them at Lowe's or Home Depot. Might even have a chance on Amazon for the next day or so. Got distribution centers down there. Sandbags are good, but Quick Dam is better, trust me. And you can reuse them. Try that with sandbags. But the rainfall is going to be problematic. Let's just look at that real quick over on the radar scope. And we can zoom down here, move our way to South Florida and vicinity. And we will start with, turn that back on, Miami. And, just like we were saying, already raining down here, and that makes things problematic for people preparing, especially on the West Coast. Let's look up here at Tampa, and, yuck. I got to drive down and all that mess. I hate having to deal with the rain ahead of time. It's just annoying, and I'm going there to work. You all have to prepare for this, so it's going to make it problematic, and it's going to seed the ground with water, obviously, and then whatever the would-be hurricane brings in, that will make things worse. And that's just the reality of it. We need to face this stuff head on. These are the challenges. We got to hopefully rise to meet them and be ready for this. All right. So the rainfall already starting to happen. So all of this stuff is right here. And then eventually some of these gaps will be filled in with peak surge and other storm surge, other like the inundation. Those graphics will start to fill in there. Once the slosh models are run and all that stuff gets input, National Hurricane Center will be on top of it. So again, the visible satellite, not quite up to enough frames to really get a good idea of how the organization is, but we already looked at it from the recon perspective, and the pressure is down. So looking at the global models first, these are important. These are your global models, not hurricane specific, and this is the 6Z run. So the run time right there, 6Z, and this is the GFS, 5,000 feet in the atmosphere. Seems to have a pretty good representation of what Milton is looking like structurally. We just run this out, and you see it turns into this solid black circle, concentric circles, and it makes landfall there pretty much just north of Tampa on Wednesday afternoon. And we can zoom into this to the southeast, lower the extent here down to where we all live. And you look at that and you say 960, that's not too bad. What's the fuss about? Believe me, this is going to drive a huge storm surge into the area because it's going to be coming in almost perpendicular, not quite, but and actually, if you look at it, it makes that jump there from southwest to northeast. And the way the angle of Tampa Bay is, that would be extremely catastrophic with storm surge that we just don't even want to think about. But we're going to have to. We're going to have to deal with this. Obviously, any deviation with this more to the north and you change things more to the south, you change things, all of that just makes sense. That's why everybody here from Cedar Key south all the way to the Keys, and then on the East Coast, because you're going to have problems over there. This is your winds, by the way. This is your 10-meter wind. That's about 33 feet in the atmosphere, the air, And nobody's 10 feet or 10 meters tall out there in our world, but we have buildings that are 10 meters tall and taller. We have trees that are that elevation, that height. But look, this thing cuts right across I-4, basically, maybe just north of it, whatever. But definitely going to be a big problem for Florida. This tells me millions without power, literally millions. And then we're going to have issues here along the north coast of Florida with onshore flow and even parts of Georgia and maybe even the Carolinas. And then our system does head out into the ocean. It is not going to get into the southeast United States far inland. Not going to do it. It's just not the type of pattern for that. So there's a little bit of good news there, certainly. So you see that approach there. And it's interesting that last little sort of jump to the north. We've got to see if that changes because Tampa Bay is our biggest worry, I think, for the U.S. hurricane problem. And then it goes on out and dies away as the pattern changes around it. What about the euro? What does it show? Same kind of deal. This is the 0Z run. So, it's not that far off, just 6 hours difference. A very similar scenario, though not nearly as strong. But the euro never does really that well on intensity. It certainly didn't capture Helene's intensity much. What I like to look for is to see what kind of a pressure fall we get. And there's a little bit of a pressure fall. I mean, only about 20 millibars deeper than where we are now. And is that going to be realistic? Maybe the euro has a perfect handle on it. We never know until it's over. But what is concerning is it is very similar to the GFS with timing, but the location of landfall with the center is a little bit farther to the south. And so that would minimize a little bit the risk to Tampa Bay and make things a lot more problematic for the areas with onshore flow down here, especially Charlotte Harbor. Because remember, this thing, when it comes in, it's that right front quadrant relative to the movement that is going to be the most affected. And then you can see the winds here on the East Coast and elsewhere. I mean, this is going to be a huge, huge, huge story. And a lot of people are going to be affected. This could impact everybody south of I-4 here, roughly, and just cut them off. Trees down, power out. Really, really going to have a catastrophe on our hands, one way or the other. It's just a matter of who, where, when, and to what magnitude. And then the euro takes it on out into the ocean as well. Now, what about the hurricane models? Let's look at those real quick. We have the Venerable HWRF, that is the Hurricane Weather Research Forecast Model. A lot of times this can overdo it with the intensity. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. It goes really quickly there within 36 hours and gets it to category 3 or 4 intensity, dropping the pressure to the 940s and eventually the 920s. This is Tuesday afternoon. Curiously enough, though, the HWRF here is slower than the global models, which is very, very odd, much slower. And then it does make landfall here. This is Thursday afternoon, so this is fully a day later. A day later, and I can't account for that. It's just different steering that the HWRF is seeing. This is a tropical cyclone specific model. It's not a global model, but it is fully a day later than the global models. And as you can see, it's right into Tampa Bay. And you can just deduce from this that your onshore flow up here, coming around this side, Tampa, St. Pete, it would just be an absolute catastrophe. And then everywhere south of here, including Charlotte Harbor, we get a significant surge. Marco Island down here, Naples to the north, Florida Bay. It would just be terrible. It really would. And a lot of that's going to have to do with the wind speed and the wind radii, sorry, how far away those hurricane force winds extend from the center. And we don't know yet. We'll have to see. So HWRF is very intense and much slower. So you say, well, what about the other hurricane models? Let's look at the HMON, which replaced the GFDL. It too is quite intense overall, dropping it into the upper 920s as well. And it too is much later with a landfall, and it weakens substantially and gets it up here along the Nature Coast south of Cedar Key with a landfall Thursday afternoon. 976, whatever that is, 970 right before landfall. Nothing to sneeze at. It would still drive a big surge. And that's what we need to be looking at, is the surge, the impacts. It's all about those impacts. So even if this starts to fall apart, all that water, that momentum is still going to be there. And then you've got these new models, the hurricane analysis and forecast system models, the HAFs as we call them, and they too strengthen it substantially. And that's the pattern. This is ridiculous, getting down 900 something millibars, but that's that, the low 900s, but that's that period where we could see rapid intensification. That's what I see. I don't worry about the specifics, but I see, the model is seeing some significant deepening there as we approach Wednesday, 9:05, whatever. Don't pay attention to that. Just pay attention to what it looks like, the structure. Structurally, it's really impressive, not in a good way, but then it does weaken pretty dramatically on the way into the coast with a landfall just north of Tampa. And that would drive a big surge in that right front quadrant. And then lastly, the HAFS B, another one of these hurricane analysis forecast system models, also dropping it very, very intense, ridiculous. 899 millibars. But again, not the details there. It is the rate of deepening. This takes it from where we are now at 990 something, and we shave off 80, 90 millibars. So the models are seeing some kind of mechanics that get this thing to really crank up. And then this makes landfall pretty intense there. And again, this is overnight Wednesday into Thursday. So the timing of this is going to be really, really interesting to see how that all works out. So let me jump back on so you see me in full screen for a minute. Uh, Clearly, we still have some things to sort out. There's stuff we don't know. One of the keys to look for here, and this is what I will be watching as I travel and work with my colleagues, the faster this develops the inner core, that eye wall, and we'll be able to see that on microwave satellite imagery. And once I say I don't think it's going to be close enough to Mexico, we might get radar out of Mexico, and then the tail Doppler radar from the plane, and of course, visible satellite and so forth. But the microwave satellite products will show us when and if it's developing that core, because once it develops a core, the sooner it does that, the sooner it starts to intensify at a very fast pace. Now, what could happen, and the danger here is you develop a core early, and I said on one of these, like for Helene, that it's like a slinky, where the slinky has to be vertically stacked and not tilted. And you can literally show that with a slinky. It's pretty cool. I forgot to get a slinky. I got to order one. So because I can show, I can literally show you what I'm talking about, how it's tilted. Anyway, once you get an untilted, vertically stacked core, it can intensify quickly. But the problem is, if it intensifies quickly, then it can go through what's called an eye wall replacement cycle, which is still very little bit understood about it, where the inner eye wall collapses and kind of goes away, and a new eye wall forms and starts to contract. When that happens, your pressure goes up, your winds come down a little bit, and everybody starts to go, yay, it's weakening, but you expand the wind field. And with the wind field, as we saw from Helene, you get a bigger surge. So it's not a good thing necessarily that you can get an eye wall replacement cycle and the structure and everything starts to degrade just a little bit. That is something we have to watch for. So the faster this develops a core, the quicker it will start to intensify and at a pretty brisk pace. Another source of terrific info for you. Again, tax dollars at work. You got to use it. Weather.gov, right there. Weather.gov. Bookmark it. Share it. Talk about it. Text your friends, whatever. Oh, I need to know about that hurricane. It is so easy. I mean, literally got a little thing up here, tracking Milton. It's all right there. You don't have to sort through anything. There's no ads, no commercial ads. There's ads for preparedness and other stuff, right? But it's all right there. And you say, I'm interested in Florida. So, you can just click on Tampa Bay area. And then you get these updates, infographics. You got to do a little homework. Some of this is on you, but it is all right here. This is about Milton. This is the radar today, tonight, tomorrow. This is from Tampa Bay area weather, the weather forecast office out there. And it's all right at your fingertips. And when there are hurricane local statements, those will show up here and back over at the National Hurricane Center homepage under Milton. There will be a section in here with hurricane local products or something like that. That takes you to these local weather service offices. And then you can start clicking on wherever you are. Oh, I'm actually in Orlando. Okay. You click on Orlando, and then right in here, get your flood watch info, your hazardous weather outlook. And once they start getting issued, there will be another bullet for hurricane local statement or something to that effect. All right. So use that because it is very, very helpful. Some of those will start going up, I imagine, tomorrow. We will do a YouTube live tomorrow morning, and I will point these out. Folks, this is such helpful stuff. You can literally find what you're looking for right there, and that can help your stress level. All right. Trying to give you some clues as to how to make this easier for you because it is stressful. A couple more things I want to point out, and then I'm going to take a look at what people are talking about and discussing. Refresh the ACE. And this is important. We are now above average on the ACE by a little bit. And the ACE scores, the accumulated cyclone energy. Think of this as the roster of the team, and this is the points they have scored. Easy way to understand it. Short-lived, weak systems get low ACE scores. I just went right through it like I'm redacting it. We don't want to do that. Let's use yellow to highlight it. So there's, Alberto, which, big rainmaker, but low A score. Then you had Barrel, and there's Barrel right there reflected in the ace. And then we were quiet for a little bit. And then that 14-4, yep, that would be Ernesto and some other activity. And then this 21 right in here, that, of course, would be Kirk. See how that works? And we won't have a huge A score for Milton because it's not going to last long enough. Even when it does become an intense hurricane, it'll be fairly short-lived. So the A score shows you the quality and the longevity of the systems. Need to check my my text here. My phone is going to catch on fire with all the text coming in. Holy cow. Anyway, that's the A score, and it's just going to go up and up and up from here. So let's look over here at the chat. Let's see what everybody's saying. I don't want to go back too much. So, got some negativity and some trollage. I'll deal with it a little bit. DW says, can we really trust the American meteorologist at the NOAA? Don't know who DW is. I think we can all agree, of course. And then my neighbor works for the NOAA. So DW might not even be, I might be talking to zeros and ones. Let me see what I can do here. Let's see if we can just see ya. There we go. And we'll do that one too, because DW, you're not helpful. There we go. That'll work. Anyway, sensible stuff here. Yeah, sometimes I do wonder, Tony, can we trust our fellow Americans? Look, though, in seriousness, we have to. We got to be able to trust each other. We have to work on things together. And when this is done, we're going to really get tested here in Florida. I mean, it is going to be hard. And we might not have seen anything like this ever. We don't know. We don't know what the end game is going to be. But the biggest thing that you all need to do, if you're in the path of this, is pace yourselves. Don't worry about rumors and BS out there, because as I said at the top of the discussion, we're going to have a lot of noise coming your way. And even right there, people put it in stuff that's just completely unhelpful. You need to mute and block the stuff that's unhelpful. I do it. I see people complaining about how bad certain social media sites have become with all sorts of just junk. You mute and block, and that at least puts the guardrails up. You can put those blinders on to the stuff that you know is irrelevant or not helpful to you. I say this so often with weather, you can be selfish. I want you to say, how will this affect me? And once you take care of yourself, it's just like the masks on the plane. They say to put the oxygen mask on yourself before assisting others. You got to take care of yourself, figure out things for yourself, then you can help your family, your friends, and your community, and it all starts to work together. All right? So I will be, hey, 677. Thanks for tuning in. I will be getting, I just noticed that, ready to leave here in just the next couple of hours or so, and I will be heading south to Florida, and we will be doing our thing. Our thing is all supported, pretty much 90% of it through Patreon, a terrific community that's been around for many years now, and we have utilized it, especially since about 2018. It really took off. Every piece of our equipment is supported by people on Patreon. Go to Patreon, you look for Hurricane Track, there's our logo, and then we connect you with your email address that you use to sign up at Patreon to our Hurricane Track Insider site. You go to hurricanetrack.com, put your Patreon email address that you got here, whatever you used, Ted McGillicuddy at AOL.com, and you put it in right there. And I swear, if we get a Ted McGillicuddy, I'll probably give you a membership. And don't make a name up, that's cheating. But you put your email address in here, and bam, you come over here to where all the magic is, our live camera dashboard, weather station information, the interactive map, which is something I am so proud of, people that have helped to put this together. Nothing like this, and this is where I can really brag. Literally nothing like this anywhere else on any website. Other websites have stuff we don't have, absolutely. But this has stuff that they don't have anywhere else, and I can prove it to you. These are our permanent cameras, kind of like our own tiny version of EarthCam. But once we set the camera systems up in Florida, these little icons will populate the area, and then you can click on them, As an example, I like my favorite up here at Rodanthe because we got so many of them. And this is what you will see. You'll see live views from our cameras. And these are permanent that we have in the Outer Banks, for example. But that's exactly what we will have down in Florida. And we're thinking, pretty much in terms of where we want to deploy, obviously south of the track line, because that's where all the onshore flow is going to be. So if the track line is going to be more north, we'll put everything from Spring Hill south. But yes, you can follow, you can support, you can contribute, you can be part of our Discord. All of that we do through Patreon. And, if you sign up and you help support us through this hurricane event, I hope you'll stick around throughout the rest of the winter and spring because we do all kinds of coverage and talking with each other and planning and meetups. And I mean, it's just a terrific thing. Like I said, social media's got some rather dark sides to it, but this is the true positive side. I mean, look, we had 600 and something people watching. That's great. I can't even imagine standing in front of 600 plus people. I've done it, but and talking to them, and then with social media, though, they all can talk back. That's the part that can get kind of scary. Whoever thought that engaging with the entire world was a good idea? Well, you were right, but you were also, it can be a scary thing. But anyway, I got to finish packing everything up. We're taking the most equipment we have ever had, and we're going to deploy it. We're going to use it to help science and help the social science and help the media. Fox Weather is our media partner, and help the public and help emergency managers. And oh, speaking of that, if you are with county, state, local government, whatever, police, fire, EMS, send me an email. It's easy. Hurmark, 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 like Hurricane Mark, Hurrmark at gmail.com. One of our moderators, you could put that in the chat, please. If you are with government officials, anything down in Florida, and you want access to our dashboard and you're in the affected area, if I get an email from the police chief of, whatever town, Massachusetts, no, that's not going to work because you're not in Florida. But if you're in the affected area, we would love to help you. And we have a special dashboard set up where you can monitor everything. And that proves to be very helpful because a lot of times these folks are out and they're busy and it's just hard and they're leaving their families behind. So we try to do what we can. We're not going to be charging government officials $10 to look at this stuff. We want to be able to help out and we can actually work together. So send me an email. And also, finally, if you've got property in some of these areas that is near the water where we could actually set some of this equipment up, also send me an email. Or if you know somebody we could get in touch with, that could be very helpful as well. And we could secure a camera system on your property. They're self-contained, looks just like that. That's the one that was set up for Michael, by the way, and it's now retired, the box. And they're actually smaller than that now. These boxes are tiny. It's fantastic how far we've come in just 6 years. But anyway, anything we can do to help you while we are in Florida, that is part of our jobs as well. I'll have the assistance of our great back end team. You all know who you are. And then our front end team will consist of myself, CJ, and Matt, maybe some others that we meet in Florida along the way. And we will be ready. We'll be ready to do the best we can with the tools that we've got. So tomorrow, another YouTube live, just call it 9 a.m. I'll be in Orlando. We'll do it from there. And then we'll go. We'll see what's happening. All right. So I'm going to kill the camera first. Goodbye, at least visually. And then I will sign off. I appreciate you tuning in. It just means the world to me. It really does that I'm able to do this with your support. I'm Mark Sudduth, Wilmington, North Carolina. I'll talk to you next from Orlando, Florida tomorrow morning.